I began to grapple with the horrific events that had transpired, the burden of doubt settling heavily on my shoulders. I couldn't shake the feeling that my girlfriend was innocent, that she had been wronged in a way that went beyond mere misunderstanding. The deeper I delved into the situation, the more I realized how intricately woven the threads of my life were with those around me, especially my family. I reached out to everyone who had attended the gathering in a desperate attempt to uncover the truth. Surely, someone must have seen something that could shed light on what Jack had done. As luck would have it, one of my friends came forward, mentioning they had seen my brother Jack lurking around my girlfriend's belongings during the gathering. Although they didn't witness him doing anything overtly malicious, the knowledge that he had been so close to her was unsettling. It was like a cold chill ran down my spine. I had to investigate further to find concrete proof of his wrongdoing. I decided to take matters into my own hands, knowing that it would be my responsibility to defend Jess and clear her name. While Jess lay in the hospital, recovering from the trauma of that night, I took her medication, what I believed to be her narcolepsy meds, and sent them off for testing. To my horror, the results revealed that the pills she had been taking were nothing more than sugar pills. It felt like the ground beneath me had given way. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. Jack had tampered with her medication. He had knowingly put her life at risk. When Jess finally woke up, her eyes filled with confusion and fear, I took a deep breath and decided to lay everything out on the table. "Jess," I began softly, trying to gauge her reaction. "We need to talk." I explained everything that had transpired, the tampered medication, and the implications of Jack's actions. She listened in stunned silence, her face draining of color as the gravity of the situation sank in. My heart ached for her, the betrayal was palpable, and I could see the trauma flickering in her eyes. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered, trembling. "How could he do this?" It was a question I had been wrestling with myself, a question that lingered in the air like a heavy fog. We had always known Jack to be reckless and impulsive, but this was a whole new level of cruelty. It was one thing for him to make jokes, but sabotaging my girlfriend's health was something I never expected from him. As the days passed, Jess gradually began to heal physically, but emotionally, the scars ran deep. I remember sitting with her one night in the dim light of our living room. The atmosphere felt thick with unspoken fears. She had bruises on her arms from the incident, but the real wounds were invisible, etched into her psyche. We talked about the events that had unfolded and how, even after taking her prescribed medication, she had fallen asleep so deeply. She expressed her fears of never being able to trust her own body again, her voice trembling as she spoke. I felt a burning anger towards Jack, but I also felt a sense of helplessness. How could someone I grew up with, someone who was supposed to be my brother, become such a monster? One night, as I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, the reality of the situation hit me like a freight train. Jack had acted out of spite, his anger over being called out at the gathering turning into a dangerous vendetta against Jess. In that moment, I realized that I had to confront him. I couldn't let his actions go unchallenged. It was my responsibility to stand up for Jess and ensure he understood the severity of his actions. The following day, I drove to Jack's apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. As I parked outside, a whirlwind of emotions surged through me: anger, fear, betrayal. I took a deep breath and made my way to his door. When he opened it, his usual cocky grin faded as he saw the expression on my face. "Hey, what's up?" he asked casually, but I could see the glimmer of apprehension in his eyes. "Cut the crap, Jack. Did you mess with Jess's medication?" I demanded, my voice steady but laced with fury. He hesitated, the silence stretching uncomfortably between us. Finally, He sighed and admitted to what he had done. "I just wanted to scare her a little, man. I didn't think it would go this far." "It was a joke," he said dismissively. "A joke?" I echoed incredulously. "You put her life in danger, and you call that a joke? She could have died, Jack. You crossed a line that you can never uncross." Jack shrugged, trying to downplay the situation. "You're overreacting. It was just a little prank. She should have just kept her mouth shut." His words made my blood boil. How could he be so callous? I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. "You're telling me that you think this is okay? You think it's acceptable to mess with someone's health because they called you out? You're a coward, Jack." I turned to leave, slamming the door behind me. The confrontation had left me shaken, but I knew I couldn't give in to his manipulation any longer. When I returned home, Jess was waiting for me, her eyes red from crying. I could see the worry etched into her features, and my heart broke for her. "Did you talk to him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, sitting beside her. He admitted it. He didn't even seem sorry. "He called it a joke, Jess. He has no idea how serious this is." Tears welled up in her eyes as she absorbed the weight of my words. We sat in silence for a moment, the reality of the situation crashing down around us. After everything, we made a joint decision to distance ourselves from Jack and my family. We needed space to heal, to escape the toxic environment that had become our reality. Moving away was not an easy choice, but we knew it was the right one. We packed our bags, leaving behind the familiar chaos of my family's home, and headed to a new city a few hours away. The decision was filled with trepidation, but it was also liberating. We were determined to start fresh, away from the painful memories that haunted us. The first few months in our new city were a whirlwind of emotions. Jess was working through her trauma, and I was grappling with the fallout of my family's disapproval. I often felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying to balance my loyalty to Jess with the familial ties that had been strained to the breaking point. Jess began attending therapy sessions to help her cope with the emotional aftermath of the incident. I admired her strength as she faced her fears head-on, learning to trust herself again. Every time she shared her progress with me, I felt a mix of pride and relief. The weight of the past slowly began to lift, and our relationship deepened in the process. During this time, I also learned how to be a better partner. I realized I couldn't fix everything for Jess, but I could support her in her healing journey. We spent evenings talking, laughing, and exploring our new surroundings. We made new friends and created memories that began to replace the painful ones. We even found a little cafe that quickly became our favorite spot, where we would spend hours discussing our dreams for the future. As the months passed, I thought about Jack less frequently. It was as if the distance had muted the pain he had caused. I hoped that he would come to his senses and recognize the severity of his actions. But deep down, I knew that wasn't a guarantee. I convinced myself that he was simply too self-absorbed to comprehend the consequences of his actions. I focused on Jess and our new life together, grateful for the peace we had found. But then, without warning, Jack reached out to me. One afternoon, as I was sitting at work during a meeting, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from him. My heart raced. I had not heard from him since we left, and I was caught off guard. I stared at my phone, frozen, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it and move on, but another part of me was curious. I decided to let it go to voicemail, thinking I could listen to his message later when I had the emotional energy to deal with whatever he had to say. The rest of the meeting was a blur, as my thoughts kept drifting back to Jack. Why was he calling? Did he finally realize the impact of his actions? Or was he simply trying to manipulate me into forgiving him? After the meeting, I slipped into an empty room, pulled out my phone, and checked the voicemails. There were 3 missed calls from Jack, and he had left a message. My heart raced as I pressed play, listening to his voice for the first time in months. He sounded desperate, remorseful even, as he apologized for what he had done. "I messed up, man. I really messed up," he said in a shaky voice. "I just wanted to explain. Can we talk?" As the message played, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, confusion, and an inkling of hope. Had he truly changed? Or was this just another attempt at manipulation? I couldn't deny that a part of me wanted to believe he was sincere, but my gut told me otherwise. As the days turned into weeks, the messages kept coming. Jack continued to reach out, expressing his regrets and urging me to meet with him. He claimed he had sought help and was working on himself. I wanted to believe him, but my instincts screamed at me to be cautious. Eventually, I relented and agreed to meet him, not without significant trepidation. I felt I owed it to Jess to at least hear him out, but I made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate any games. I chose a public place for our meeting, a small park near our new apartment, where I could easily leave if things turned south. The day of our meeting arrived, and my heart raced as I approached the park. As I neared the designated bench, I saw him sitting there, looking smaller than I remembered. He was fidgeting, his eyes darting around nervously. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Hey, man," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past hanging heavily in the air. I finally broke the tension. "So, what's this all about?" He looked down at his hands, then took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized how messed up my actions were. I was wrong to mess with Jess's medication, and I'm sorry for everything that happened. I didn't mean for it to go that far." I felt my anger flare again. "You didn't mean for it to go that far? Jack, you put her life in danger. You don't just get to brush that off as a mistake." I know, he pleaded, desperation lacing his voice. "But I'm trying to change. I've been seeing a therapist, and I want to make amends. I want to be a better brother." I paused, contemplating his words. It felt like a fragile thread of hope had been extended, but I wasn't ready to trust it. "Why should I believe you? You've hurt Jess and me, and you thought it was all just a joke." He nodded, his face pinched with regret. "I get it. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to try to make things right. I've been an awful brother, and I want to change. I miss our family, our bond." The sincerity in his voice shook me, but I felt a wave of protectiveness for Jess rise within me. "You don't get to just decide you want to be part of our lives again after everything you've done. Jess is still healing. We need time and space." Jack nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I understand. I'm not asking for an immediate reconciliation. I just wanted to reach out, to show you that I'm trying to change. Please give me a chance to prove it." I studied him closely, searching for any signs of deceit. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but I still felt a sense of unease. I couldn't shake the fear that he might be playing mind games once more. "If you truly want to change, then show it. Give Jess and me the space we need to heal. Maybe then we can talk about rebuilding trust." He looked at me, a mix of gratitude and sadness etched on his face. "I'll respect your wishes. I just hope one day you can forgive me." I stood up, feeling the heaviness in my chest. "Take care of yourself, Jack. I hope you find what you're looking for." As I walked away, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Part of me wanted to believe that Jack could change, but another part of me knew that the damage had been done. I had to protect Jess at all costs. When I returned home, Jess was waiting for me, her eyes searching mine for answers. "How did it go?" I took a deep breath, preparing myself to share the mixed emotions swirling inside me. "He seemed sincere, Jess. He's been seeing a therapist and wants to change." Her expression hardened. "And you believe him?" I hesitated. "I don't know." He seemed genuinely remorseful, but I also know that trust is hard to rebuild. Jess sighed, her shoulders sagging. "I don't want to go through this again. I just want to heal and move on." "I know, and that's what we'll do," I promised, taking her hand in mine. "We'll focus on us. We've come so far, and I won't let him drag us back into that chaos." As we navigated the complexities of healing, Jess and I became each other's support system. We made a pact to be open and honest about our feelings, ensuring that we didn't allow the past to haunt us any longer. Time passed, and although the wounds from the past still lingered, we gradually found a new rhythm in our lives. Jess continued her therapy sessions, and I supported her every step of the way. We celebrated small victories. She learned to trust herself again, and I discovered the strength to confront my family's toxic dynamics. One evening, as we sat on our couch watching a movie, Jess turned to me with a soft smile. "I'm so grateful for you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "You've been my rock throughout all of this." I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. "And you've been my light, Jess. We're in this together, no matter what." As the credits rolled on the movie, Jess glanced at me with a newfound determination. "You know, I think it's time for us to have a conversation with Jack. If he truly wants to change, then maybe we should give him a chance." I felt a mix of apprehension and hope at her words. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" She nodded, her gaze steady. "I want to face this head on. We can't let fear dictate our lives any longer." With that decision, we reached out to Jack, cautiously agreeing to meet at a neutral location, a local coffee shop that had become our favorite spot. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. When we walked into the cafe, I spotted Jack sitting in a corner booth, his face pale with anticipation. He looked up as we approached, his expression revealing a mix of hope and fear. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone even. "Hey," he replied, his voice barely audible. As we settled into our seats, an awkward silence enveloped us. It felt like the air was thick with tension, but Jess broke the ice. "So, Jack, we wanted to hear more about what you've been working on." He took a deep breath, clearly nervous. "I've been seeing a therapist regularly. I realized that I've been carrying a lot of anger and resentment, and it's affected my relationships, especially with you guys. I've been trying to work through it." I watched as he spoke, trying to gauge his sincerity. "What specifically are you doing to change?" I asked, my voice steady. "I've been focusing on understanding my emotions better, learning how to communicate without resorting to manipulation or anger. I want to be a better brother, a better person." Jess and I exchanged glances, and I could see a flicker of hope in her eyes. "That sounds like a good start," she said softly. "But trust takes time, Jack. We need to see consistent change." "Of course," he agreed. "I don't expect you to trust me right away. I just hope we can rebuild what we lost." As the conversation unfolded, I could sense a shift in the dynamic. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of the brother I had once known, a young man who had been lost but was now seeking a way back. It was a fragile moment, but it felt significant. As the meeting came to a close, we agreed to keep the lines of communication open, taking small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. Leaving the cafe, Jess turned to me, her eyes bright with hope. That went better than I expected. Yeah, I replied, a cautious smile forming on my lips. Maybe there's a chance for him after all. In the following months, we maintained contact with Jack, cautiously allowing him back into our lives. He continued his therapy, and I saw glimpses of genuine change. Our relationship was fragile, but with each small step, we rebuilt the trust that had been shattered. Jess and I had learned the power of resilience, of facing our fears rather than running from them. We found strength in each other, discovering that love could heal even the deepest wounds. One day, as we sat together reflecting on our journey, Jess took my hand and smiled. I think we've come so far, and I believe we can face whatever comes next. I squeezed her hand, filled with gratitude. Together, we can overcome anything. And as we looked toward the future, I realized that the bonds we had formed through pain had become the foundation of something beautiful, an unwavering love that would guide us through life's challenges.